Hey guys, it's Charles from Tech Always, and today I'm going to bring you guys a crazy budget gaming rig as part of a competition with a few other YouTubers, Lee from CompTV and Matt from the ToastyBros. Both of them are going to have builds up on their channel as well, so be sure to check them out, and I'll be sure to link their videos in the description below. So the rules of this competition were simple. We had to build the best gaming rig possible for $100 excluding taxes and shipping. We could buy parts from wherever we wanted, including eBay, Craigslist, Reddit Hardware Swap, or wherever we could find something. And I did say this was a competition, so we do have from Unorthodox Hardware who's going to be judging our PCs to decide on the winner for this competition. But now that that's all out of the way, let's get to my build and the parts that I used. For the motherboard and RAM, I got a combo with a motherboard from a Dell pre-built, 4GB of DDR2 clocked at 800MHz and a Core 2 Duo. While the specs are nothing impressive, the price was at only $15 shipped from eBay. One issue with the motherboard is that it's a BTX layout, which caused some problems during the build process, but I'll get to that later. The RAM is also nothing fancy, just a 4x1 kit, but it'll get the job done. So speaking about that Core 2 Duo, I actually replaced it with a Q6600. This was an extremely high-end CPU in its prime, launching at $850. The only issue is that was 10 years ago. While the Core 2 Quad days are mostly over, it can still hold its own in most modern games, with 2.4 GHz clock speed and 4 physical cores. One of the biggest reasons I picked this up was its super cheap price of just $8.95 on eBay. These normally go for close to $15, so I was happy to pick it up for the price. To cool my CPU, I was looking for the cheapest cooler possible, as noise and temps weren't a big concern for this build, and I found somebody locally selling an Intel stock cooler for $3, which fit my needs really well. While the cooler mounting holes won't fit, I did a little bit of a ghetto mount, but you'll see that in a minute. Right, with the hard drive, I had the same approach as the CPU cooler. I needed the cheapest drive that I could store all my benchmarking games on, and that happened to be a 320GB Hitachi Dexar drive for just $325. But I ran into a lot of issues with this drive, so I then switched to an 160GB drive that I got with a pre-build for free. I picked the pre-build up to use the case, but then it turns out I couldn't use the case because of the BTX layout of the motherboard. So the majority of the budget went to the graphics card, and for $51 I was able to pick up a 660 Ti off eBay. This is a pretty good price for this card, and while the card is starting to show its age, with only 2GB of VRAM, it's still very capable at 1080p gaming. I did also make a small change to the cooler, but you've already seen that if you follow me on Twitter at TechAlways. I was able to overclock this card an extra 111MHz for all my benchmarks. Now to power this whole build, I could have cheaped out and gone with something that would work for about 10 minutes and then exploded, but I wanted this system to be reliable, so I went with an EVGA 500W 80+ white power supply. I picked this up for $16.50, which isn't a great deal, but I needed a power supply and I couldn't wait for more deals to pop up. So in total, this build came out to $94.45. So I don't have a full build montage because I had to do a few unorthodox things that I did over multiple days, so I'm just going to show you some of those things that I had to do to make the build work. So you guys saw the stock cooler and the pins were nowhere near the mounting holes in the motherboard, so I snapped the side pins off and zip tied the cooler down. With enough patience and a few attempts, I was able to get the temps reasonable at just under 60 degrees, and I was pretty comfortable with this. Another issue I have with the cooler is that the Dell motherboard I got only had one fan header, which was a 5-pin Dell proprietary connector. So I thought I was screwed at this point until I found a pinout guide showing the pins had the same functions of a 4-pin fan header, just in a different order. So I switched the pin order on the cooler, and the fan works fine now. So the CPU cooler wasn't the only part I had to cut out to make work. As I alluded to earlier, the GPU didn't make it out safe. So I don't think this motherboard is supposed to be used with 2-slot PCIe cards because there are some massive capacitors that stick out the motherboard right next to the slot. So my solution to this was to take the GPU apart, cut a nice big hole in the cooler shroud so that those capacitors go into the GPU instead of hitting it. Before anybody gets mad about this, know the temperatures are not affected and the GPU never goes above 75 degrees when overclocked. So the final unorthodox thing I did, you guys have already seen, and it's the cardboard box case. But unlike the others, I wouldn't really recommend doing this as it's pretty flimsy, has almost no airflow, and it's just a pain to work with. But now that you guys know what went into this build, let's get into the important part, the benchmarks. So looking at the benchmarks, you can tell there's a very obvious CPU bottleneck. But even though that's there, I'm still very impressed and happy with how this PC turned out. I really didn't expect to be able to build a PC that can run modern titles at fairly good settings for just $100. So now that you know all about my $100 build, be sure to go and check out Matt and Lee's videos to find out all about theirs, and their videos again will be linked in the description below. So if you like this video, be sure to like it. If you didn't, leave a comment down below as to why and I'll try and fix it in the next video. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe and maybe even hit that bell next to the subscribe button. Also, follow me on Twitter at TechAlways with 2 S's for behind the scenes updates on the channel. Thanks for watching. Bye.